Hi, and welcome back to the Super Wall Jump podcast, where I interview content creators to video game developers and everything in between. With me today, I have Lilla Glass. Say hi, Lilla.
Hello, everyone.
Lilla, who are you and what do you do?
I am a freelance narrative designer. I work with mostly indie studios, adding story elements to their games and creating cohesive tones.
So, what exactly is a narrative designer? Because it sounds like it's different than writer.
It is and it isn't. So every job post that you see seeking a narrative designer is going to have a list of qualifications, and no two lists will look exactly alike. The one thing that's true across the board is that narrative design, I think of it as being more three-dimensional than writing traditional prose, your short stories, your novels, even your graphic novels, because in a good game, or in a really immersive game, they're going to be created by a symbiotic studio team. These stories should bleed into every element to make it a more immersive experience, and every element that's been pre-established in the game should affect the story. Um, at least that's my opinions. I know people approach it from different angles.
Makes sense. How long have you been writing for?
Writing in general, or professionally, I've been writing about 6 years, but I have that cheesy answer every writer has where they were writing bad poetry in the margins of their homework throughout elementary school. So, we all have the same origin story in that way.
So it's been a
Absolutely.
lifelong trial, you could say.
For sure.
What? So, how did you start writing professionally? Because writing poetry in your notebook is one thing, and it's lots of fun. But how do you go from doing, writing for fun to getting someone to say, "Yes, I will pay you human dollars to write something for me"?
Yes, those human dollars, it's a fickle industry, so I don't want to put too much emphasis on the human dollars that I've made. Um, but publication, that's probably the big start. The first time that you get published, I would say, is a huge step in the direction of, if not actually establishing your professional career as a writer. So I did what a lot of people do. I had a story in my head that I wanted to get out there. I would have read it, but it didn't exist, so I had to write it. Took my crazy friend's advice to actually go out there and present it and query it to publishers, and got a small book deal. Did that for a while and then
Ooh.
stumbled into narrative design and thought, oh my gosh, this is it. I can't say it's better because they are vastly different, but it is an industry that's more suited to my personality and strengths.
Fair enough. What was the querying process like? Because I have no idea. There is one person I know on Facebook who's like, "I'm querying for my astrology-based book series," and I'm like, "I don't know anything about any of that." But good luck to you, Caroline.
It's brutal. If you want to grow a backbone fast, pour your heart and soul into a piece of work, and then do a 3-paragraph synopsis of it that you send out to publishers and agents so that they can send you a form rejection within 10 minutes. Um, you will get a lot of them, but it really does build up the backbone, and it's a matter of taste again. It's a matter of taste, it's a matter of trend. It's a matter of whether they have the right connections. There are so many factors. So try not to take it personally, and hopefully your story will find its right home eventually.
Yeah, I am an actor. In addition to everything else, and if you are creative, you have to be ready and able to take a lot of rejection constantly. And almost none of it is personal. Sometimes it's just, we wanted something a little different.
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely.
uh, what kind of things have you written? Because you mentioned your book that you got published, and again, congratulations on that. That is
Thank you.
big for any writer, I think, or any creative to actually submit something and have people approve it. What else have you written?
So there's of course that book series. I before that, even, there were a couple short stories that I managed to get into anthologies and literary journals. That's where a lot of people start. It's really fun because you get to try out different genres and tones and points of view. If you're still finding your voice, definitely starting in short stories just for kicks, and you can submit them with very little pressure to online journals and anthologies.
And also, you
Um,
can then go on to tell other people, hey, I'm a published author. Aren't I super fancy?
oh, absolutely. Yes, that's how I introduce myself all the time.
I, hey, branding is half of the battle. Being able to say, yeah, I'm published. I was in my first features last year, and so now I can say, yeah, I've been in some feature films. You may or may not have heard of them. They haven't heard of them, but it's about being able to sell yourself as, yeah, I'm cool. Trust me. It's not just me saying that. The one other person at least thought I was cool.
Right. So that one's easier to say, this person thinks I'm cool, rather than saying I'm cool. I feel,
Yeah.
you know.
I've been
Um,
peer reviewed, actually.
exactly. Let's see. What actually got me into narrative design was a bit of a off base. It was my day job with I do behavioral health. I've been in that field for quite a while, specifically with children in the foster care system, as my day job while I was, writing my first novels and stories. And there were some very, very strategically minded kids that had huge passions for gaming and weren't responding to some of the more traditional therapeutic methods. So I wrote D&D campaigns for them that were based around their therapeutic goals, and they got to be the one helping come in and solve these other characters' problems from the outside. They were the ones enacting the change. I firmly believe that games are getting to step into a world that sees you and responds to your actions is a wonderful reminder that our actions matter in the real world too. And so getting to work with those kids and build those campaigns for them and adjust it so it perfectly fits their personality and their ideal story, and see them blossom and grow and respond to that story and embody it, was such an enriching experience that I just kind of instantly leapt over into narrative design and haven't looked back.
Can you tell us more about some of those campaigns and like how they helped those kids? Obviously, for like HIPAA and privacy reasons, you don't have to give exact examples, but I would love to hear more about how you saw kids who needed help and wrote a campaign that helped them address those issues.
Right. So, one, I worked pretty closely with the therapeutic team just to make sure that I was
Mhm.
getting the exact action steps that they would normally be asked to do in a traditional therapeutic setting. Um, but really, I grew up in the foster care system, so I kind of have this experience firsthand. Everything is decided for you. And it isn't incredibly helpful to always attend team meetings every month where everyone talks about your behavioral issues and then gives you more steps that you need to follow through to solve them.
Yeah.
By giving children, making them the main character in the story, the person who is enacting the change, and having other people going through some of the things that they've faced or struggled with, and having them be the ones who chooses the action steps. They're the ones who solve the problem, even if it's in a completely fantastical way that wouldn't work in real life. That is imbuing them with the agency to address these issues head
Mhm.
on. It's not somebody else choosing their path for them.
Yeah, and being a kid, just in general, you don't have a lot of agency in your life. Um,
Right.
if you're 10, if you want to go and play with friends, you probably don't have a phone. Though I'm not sure nowadays, considering how everyone has like 2-year-olds are getting tablets. But you can't drive. Um, you can't really hop on your bike and ride for more than like a mile or two. Like you don't get to choose when you eat or like where you go to school, or oftentimes a lot of who your friends are. A lot of times your friends are just who you are in class with, and it's like, okay, cool. I guess I have to be friends with Doug. Doug smells like used crayons, and I don't know what that smells like, but that's what he smells like, and you have to deal with him anyways, because he's in like 90% of your classes. That's not a real person. That's just a fun. I, that's not his real name.
Fair enough. I don't. Have you read Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson by chance?
I have not. Why do you
Oh,
bring
okay.
it up?
Just it. he refers to every crew member as Doug because they're all background characters, so that's just what it reminded me of. Little tangent there.
That's fine. Part of my brand of comedy is I just pick random white guy names because everyone knows a Doug, everyone knows a Josh, everyone knows a Craig. They may have mixed feelings on them, but everyone knows someone like that. So it helps bring images into people's minds, which is really half of what storytelling is.
For sure.
So what is your process beyond just writing D&D games?
So for the computer games that I've been working on most recently, as I said before, every process is different, every game is different. The one thing that I'm pretty consistent on, as long as the world's already somewhat established, otherwise I would start with world building, but in my
Mhm.
experience, game designers have an idea already of the world that they want to inhabit and the kind of game that they want to create. And it's your job to kind of, I've heard somebody call it a narrative plumber. You connect those little bits and make something out of it to make an actual pattern, an actual story, a path to follow. So I like to start with the characters. I think
Mhm.
that I'm a character writer, heavily character driven, all about the emotional arcs. So I
I
tend
see the
to
Baldur's
present
Gate
character
3.
bios first.
I see
Sorry?
the Baldur's Gate 3 characters on the wall behind you, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I just got back from, well, not just, a few weeks ago went to Emerald City Comic Con, and I like to pick up some original art from the stands every time I go. So I've got my grumpy goth gang, as I refer to the three that I always take into battle with me, behind me now.
I don't blame you.
But yes, no, I'm obviously a huge fan of character-driven games.
Mhm.
Baldur's Gate is way up there on the list. I've got some Clair Obscur stuff to the side of me. I can't move my camera to show you, but it has been a phenomenal, like the last half decade has been phenomenal for story-driven, character-driven games that really touch on heavy literary themes a lot of the time. I mean, I can't count the times that I actually teared up in Clair Obscur, not just from the actual script writing, but some of the more diegetic storytelling, the elements that they embedded in. And I don't want to give spoilers, so I won't talk about my favorite parts right now for those who haven't played it, but there were
After
just some
after we're
moments in
done
the
with the
bells
recording, we
and
can we can talk about that because I also played Clair Obscur last year, and I was also like, yes,
right?
yes.
Okay, so one of my, if we're allowed to give a little spoiler, well, it's a huge spoiler. So plug your ears, audience, if you haven't played Clair
Spoiler
Obscur
warnings
yet.
for Clair Obscur, which if you haven't played, you should play because I think it's like $40. Get it on the next Steam sale. It was Game of the Year last year for a reason. But with that,
No weak
spoiler
elements.
time for Clair Obscur.
So one of the things that makes narrative design so different from just writing regular prose is that you put embed story elements in the combat, the UI, the music, just every element of the game. Uh, the part that made me tear up more than the twist at the end of Act One, more than the ending, no matter which one you choose, was actually the battle with the paintress at the very end when she starts healing the party. That showed so much of her character, her backstory, and by then you're just starting to put the pieces together, right? You're like, you've got
Mhm.
it almost figured out and you just need a little more nudge. That that almost broke me. I was just paused the game for a little bit.
Like, oh, she's the god of this world, but also she's the god of this world. You know? It is, all right, cool. This is part. She cares for everything in this place, and that means everything, including you, even when you are trying to kill her, or as you find out later, bleep. Uh, and with that, we can sort of end this. Listener, here's where we're ending the spoiler bit for Clair Obscur, and now we can just talk about general cool stuff in the game. Um,
Yes.
one of the things I really loved about Clair Obscur was the fact that there was no perspective character.
Hmm.
Everyone in the world has lived in the world for decades. Obviously, not a super long time, but they don't tell you, oh, yeah, here there are monsters. Oh, yeah, these are the Gestrals, which are the mannequin people. They don't explain any of that. They just talk about it like it's already a thing. And that does wonders for making you feel immersed in the world and actually care about what's going on in it. You don't feel like a
Absolutely.
stranger.
Right. They did so much in that introductory scene. Uh,
Mhm.
all of the world building, just explaining it through basic not just the conversations, but through the artwork, through the environment, through the various ceremonial rites that they were going through. You learn so much without actually having to have little tutorial prompts or pick up
Mhm.
books. It was beautifully executed.
Yeah, and that is something I imagine that you can have a lot of help with as a narrative designer. Hey, if it's about the characters are why people care about stories. Um, it's the thing that all people who love sci-fi and fantasy don't want to admit. Yeah, I know you have a really cool in-depth magic system all built out, but are the people in your world compelling? Because at the end of the day, I don't care whether or not, again, Doug the Wizard can cast a super fireball. I care whether that fireball is going to help Doug connect with his father. You know? That's why we care about this stuff. One of my favorite shows is The Expanse, which, if you've seen it, you know it's sort of like between hard sci-fi and soft sci-fi, some cool stuff going on, but the reason you watch is because you have these great characters like Amos and Naomi Nagata, and everyone in the world feels like a real person with a lot of problems, and that's why you keep watching. Obviously there's cool sci-fi stuff happening, but it's seeing the characters react to what's going on in the world which gets you invested.
Absolutely. And space operas are such a popular, huge genre for that reason. They show real human struggles in fantastical circumstances. That's what a lot of genre fiction is.
Yeah. And I will point out with Baldur's Gate, Baldur's Gate, I'd say, does this even better than Clair Obscur. Every single character's backstory and narrative is intertwined with the overarching story in a way
Yes.
that really, like, everyone feels relevant. And it's part of why when I play Baldur's Gate 3 now, I have to play as the Dark Urge, because if you're playing as the Dark Urge, you also get tied into the overarching story in a way that you just don't get when you're playing as, yes, this is my OC, please do not steal.
It is so, yeah, it's hard to go back from playing back to a tab when you've played a Dark Age, that's for sure. But Larian's team is so gifted at that. If I don't know if you've played the Divinity games as well, but they just have this. I will constantly refer to it as symbiosis because I really believe that's what a good studio team is. But the
Mhm.
way that they manage to work together and weave stories together and weave worlds together is really beautiful.
Oh yeah, I am
And
very.
thematically, they choose a theme each time, and it's so resonant and always emerges and grows stronger throughout the plot. I mean, I know we're 3 games in with them, but I'm so excited to see what they do next.
I'm just thinking of Baldur's Gate 3, how that the theme of that game was authority.
Right.
Every single character in that game has some sort of relationship with authority, and that relationship is interrogated until the end of the game.
Absolutely. And showing that kind of double-edged sword where it comes to in each of their lives, it comes to the choice to continue the cycle of abuse or break it. And showing they just did a beautiful job of showing the consequences of each. And none of the endings were cookie cutter. There were positives and negatives to each of them. So
Yeah, I
the replayability.
I
Oh,
still
I
need.
get so envious. I know it was a huge writing team, like
Mhm.
15 main writers and more beyond that just helping, but
That's a lot.
yeah, yeah. Yep.
I can't think of 15 people that I'd be okay with writing something with. I'm working on writing a movie script with my wife right now, and we have gotten into the most heated debates in our whole relationship over this script than anything else. Like, oh yeah, man, we taxes, oh, how are we going to plan the wedding, etc., etc. No, actually, whether or not Brandon would or would not say this thing is a bigger fight than anything else.
You see, there are different types of writers out there. I am very much a collaborative writer. I absolutely
Mhm.
love co-writing things. I love helping to bring other people's ideas to life. I love when people have things to add to my own ideas. So if you find yourself being a really collaborative writer, then narrative design might be for you because every member of that team, from sound effects to UI elements, is going to have something to add to that story. And it's your job to catch those good ideas while they're flying across the writer's room and stick them to the plot before they start to fade.
Mhm.
um,
You have to remember
Otherwise,
all these things that are brought up.
prose and screenwriting are also really great things you can do for solo endeavors.
Yes. Hey, I will say, despite my wife and I arguing about script stuff, we come out with a better script at the end of it. It
Nice. And
always ends. It always ends with one of us being like, "Okay, no, you're right. Now that I have read it out loud, this sounds better, actually."
awesome. I'm really glad to hear that. Yes, the end result of anything in that vein is that you make something together that nobody could have made alone. And
Yeah.
that's where really all the novelty comes from. They say that there's nothing new under the sun, and that's a little bit true, but where ideas collide, that little nexus, that's where you find your originality and your spark.
Yeah, a big part of writing is taking two things that aren't connected and then connecting them and seeing what happens. I know that one writing tip that I've come across is if two characters are in a room together, they should talk.
Hmm.
If you have two characters and you put them in a room together and they're not going to talk about anything and they're not going to engage with each other, they're not good characters. So you should probably come up with something else.
And like all rules in writing, there are always exceptions. I do think that having two characters absolutely not talk in a room can be very tense.
Yes, obviously there
That's
are
nonverbal
exceptions.
communication.
I also play a large amount of D&D, and I have played as and played with characters who are like, I'm stoic and cool, and I don't engage with anyone. It's like, all right, cool. That sounds really cool if you're trying to remake Sword Art Online, but you're not the main character right now. And yes, Sword Art Online is going to catch strays from me. I'm not sorry. So how is games writing different than writing for books?
Well, we've gone over quite a bit of that, but I'll reiterate some of those points. The collaborative process is the big one.
Mhm.
Stepping into a world that you didn't necessarily create. I just finished one project. I'm working on two more. In two of those projects, the worlds were pretty well done when I got there, and the other one, I get to be part of the foundational lore building for a new IP, which is really exciting. Um, because it's sci-fi horror, and I can't talk too much about it. But I'm really
Obviously NDAs, and also hey, if you want to know how that game turns out, you can drop the name of the game so people can go and wishlist it.
right. So I can't even for the one that I'm doing some foundational lore on, I can't even give the name yet because they haven't released the trailer yet, but we're working on one. I can say it's with Sky Lantern. They're a new upstart studio that's doing some very cool stuff. So you can check them out. And for the other projects, I just came out with a cute fairy tale game called it's called Fairy Circle. It's with Playhooky. It's adorable and short and silly and was a ton of fun to help create. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, there's one that is called High Pines that you can wishlist on Steam at this point. That is a very eerie adventure story. Um,
Oh,
yes. Set in the Pacific Northwest, which is where I'm from, so that's pretty exciting.
it works out.
Anyway, I went on a total ADHD rabbit trail there. Forgive me. All of that to say that you can write in somebody else's world, you collaborate with other creatives to create this story and make it something that none of you could have created on your own. The other part is you're really there to help facilitate the player, to help facilitate their
Mhm.
agency and their experience. So you need to be thinking about what they want. I learned so much working with those kids on those D&D campaigns about what different people might be looking for in their gaming experience, the type of adventures they want to go on, the things that make them feel seen and heard, both in the characters and in their own player choices. And even if you're playing in a completely linear plot, you as a player are still impacting the game. It is you going through the trials, it is your choices when you level up, it is the way that you use your different tools and your different potions, your abilities. You will always have an impact on the plot. So, whenever you can find an opportunity to allow a player a choice, even if it is in a completely linear plot, do it. Find a way.
Yeah. Books are a one-sided sort of passive activity, but games are an interactive medium. if you're a player, you want to feel like you have agency. Even if you really don't, when you are doing anything, you shouldn't feel like you're being pulled along by the story, but rather that you are pushing the story forward.
Absolutely. Um, we talked about two vastly different types of games today that were both incredible narrative experiences. Clair
Hmm.
Obscur was pretty much a linear plot. There were a few little things you could choose along the way, but most of your
Hmm.
agency came from your builds and from your party compilation, right? A lot of that story was linear and just kind of guiding you along, but it never felt like you were being railroaded. It was a big world. You were genuinely discovering things. We
Hmm.
talked a little bit about that intro scene and how they set up the world building. There are ways to facilitate that feel like exploring a world instead of just living your everyday life as this character who is going to do what they
Hmm.
want regardless of what you want.
Yeah.
And then on the opposite end, you have the massive, I can't even imagine what the story web looks like for Baldur's Gate with the amount of if thens in the branches.
I don't even want to think about it. That sounds like it's gonna hurt my brain.
So, no matter what project you're working on in narrative design, that is an element. So, those I think are the three main differences between narrative design and writing for prose.
Makes sense. You mentioned that people are looking for different things in their games, like with your
Mhm.
work with those kids. Can you give us some examples of? All right, okay, cool. What are they? What are different players looking for?
I mean, so from all the demo events that I've gone to since starting narrative design, I think 95% of players are looking for pets that you can interact with and hug. Um,
Yes.
I think we're going to see a massive influx in collectible pets in games, no matter what those games are, because look, the people have spoken. Uh,
We want
but
little guys. I want to have a little guy and I want to pet the little guy.
right, right, and who doesn't? Um, but you could predict a lot of what an audience wants just based on what genre the game is, what playstyle you're going for. If you're building a cozy fairy tale puzzle game, you don't want to put a ton of super violent boss battles in it. You probably want to have different forms of stakes in your narrative because people don't go to cozy cozy puzzle games for gore and suspense necessarily. Meanwhile, if you're crafting a horror game, you can't go into it and be like, okay, and now the pixie is going to spout couplets at you for 20 minutes, unless those couplets are really terrifying.
I mean, it also depends on the quality of the couplets. If it's really, really bad poetry, I do think that could qualify as horror. No, I can't get away. It's just like me in eighth grade. No.
Fair enough. I hope that answered the question. I
Yeah,
mean, there's a
different
lot of different game genres, a lot of different styles, so
different
different audiences
demos
want different things.
want different things from their games, and different genres also require different stuff.
And if
Um,
you are dealing with a game where you do get the joy of getting to do branching dialogue and branching paths, which is rarer than you'd think, that's a huge scope thing. It takes a lot of time, money,
mhm.
investment, hours. Hours is time, so just ignore that redundancy.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen too often, but crafting those paths so different players will respond to them. I mean, a super villainous path, a really lawful good path. You can just go through the D&D archetypes if you really want to, and as long
Mhm.
as every one of those is satisfied, you're probably making your player base happy.
Yes. However, it should be noted that if you do want to have branching paths like that, like in the game Infamous, which if you haven't played, I don't know if you can play it on anywhere considering how old it is. Um,
Hmm.
but it had a good storyline and a bad storyline. But that meant that the writers had to write two different games.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to have good responsive stories like that, understand you are going to be causing yourself to have more work in the future. Because if you just say, ah, yes, and if you do this evil thing, the exact same thing happens, but someone frowns at you, your players aren't really going to be engaged because they're not going to feel like they have any agency.
Yeah.
Oh, well, the dragon was going to burn down the village, no matter whether or not we fought him or not. Okay. why am I here then?
Yeah, yeah. If you have to do a linear story, I often think it's better not to pretend that you're giving characters or players a
Mhm.
choice because we know when we're being duped. It's never a fun experience.
Um, something that I've come across as well is
Right
railroading is
next to
not.
being high, sorry.
You're all good. Railroading is not a bad thing because you know what else is on rails? Roller coasters. Roller coasters are on rails, and people don't mind that at all. They love to be taken on an authored experience, so long as
Mhm,
it's fun. Uh,
exactly.
and also so long as, you keep it within a certain time frame. No one wants a, 150-hour linear experience, because that sounds exhausting.
It truly does.
Yeah. So what do people get wrong about writing for games? Because I'm certain that you probably talk to people and they're like, "Oh, it must be blank."
Gosh, wow, I wasn't anticipating that question, and I'm not really sure. I think most people just ask, how do you write from games? How is it different? Um, because I know that there are a lot of narrative designers out there, actually. It's a
Mhm.
pretty broad field. There are, like I said, a million different types of narrative design that you can really specialize in. It means a
Mhm.
different thing to each studio. Um, but we don't actually make up a big percentage of people who are writers.
Mhm.
A lot of writers are prose writers, or short story writers, or comic book writers, screenwriters. So generally, people have more questions than assumptions, I think, about narrative design when I talk to them.
Fair. But do people get things wrong about writing in general? Because I feel like there are some people that are like, "Oh, Stephen King used to write like a book for in just 2 weeks, and he did that like 20 times a year." And we have to be like, "Okay, that's not what normal people do."
Right. Right. Yeah, there's the assumption that it's easy. That one's a big one, which and for some people, it does come more naturally than others. I've always
Mhm.
been a very lyrical writer, so I do a ton of iteration to make sure that I'm getting the right rhythms, getting the right word choice. The alliterative moments make things lighter when they're supposed to. Things like that. But
Mhm.
gosh, writing in general, I think the biggest myth is that you are famous and make a lot of money.
Yeah, yeah. That's not a thing actually. No
Yeah,
matter
yeah,
no
that's
matter
very
what
rare.
what kind of writing you're doing, you're not making the big bucks. Um,
And even the people who do make it really big and they get those big multi-million dollar book deals, they're still proportionately, they could have been in a different art making more money. This is a labor of love for sure.
yeah, and it's sort of like streaming where yes, theoretically you could be one of the ones to make it really, really, really big, but like that percentage is super, super small. We're talking fractions of a percent at a
Right.
certain point. And if you wanted to make a lot of money, just go be a doctor, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
People need doctors, clearly. I mean, it's gonna suck, but you could go be a doctor and make guaranteed money. With that, what's your favorite game of all time?
For those listening and not watching, I am gonna say Baldur's Gate 3. And I know that's a very vanilla answer, especially in our current atmosphere where everybody loves Baldur's Gate 3, everybody loves Clair Obscur. But
Mhm,
narrative masterpiece. I
mhm,
mean, just as far as what they were able to pull off, something of that scope hasn't been done before. And the next closest probably is Divinity 2, or Divinity Original Sin 2, which is also the Larian team. So,
yeah.
um, yeah, that one's probably my favorite. There are some hidden gems out there. I loved Detroit Become Human. I've never been so stressed playing a game in my life. It really challenges your decision paralysis, having to make those choices on a timer. So, if you need some exposure therapy, everyone out there, Detroit Become Human. If you do not make those decisions fast enough, people will die. Let's see. I love the Fire Emblem series. I don't know if you've played that franchise at all.
I have not, but I've heard nothing but good things about it, both from narrative people that I know and also people who really like tactics games.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, that's the fun about CRPGs, right? A lot of them are
Mhm.
heavily tactical and heavily narrative. And Fire Emblem, it's a very wholesome Nintendo franchise, but it still
Mhm.
has all of those elements that you would find in a choice-driven RPG. The standout characters, the dark traumatic backstories, the relationship building and intertwined arcs. Highly recommend.
Oh yeah. Yeah, my personal favorite is Outer Wilds because
Mhm.
that game did make me cry, and if I could wipe my brain of one game and go back and play it, it would be that game because once you've beaten it, you can't play it again. I mean, you can, but it's not the same.
I am working my way through Outer Wilds right now, actually. It's for High Pines, the game that
Mhm.
I'm working on with Studio Sapling, the game
Mhm.
designer's favorite game and biggest inspiration was Outer Wilds. So he gifted that game to me as, a little bit of an
Welcome to the
inspirational
team.
thing. And yeah, I'm slowly working my way through it. I get motion sickness really easy, so
Oh,
the
oof.
anti-gravity aspect has been wearing on me, but playing in little 30-minute intervals here and there and trying
And
very hard to reach safe spots are
and that's what the game
inspiration.
is built around. It's a
Mhm.
built around, I think it's 22-minute chunks before everything resets. So that does make it easy to pick up and put back down.
Right.
But yes, I look forward to you beating that game because once you do, you're going to be like, wow, I can't go back. Dang.
I've heard that it's one of those bittersweet things, kind of like a book hangover when you finish a really great book and you're like, well, I can never reread that for the first time. That's
Yeah,
the general
basically.
feedback I get on the end of Outer Wilds.
Yes, well, I can only hope that you finish it. But with that, uh, anything else you'd like to leave us off with before we wrap things up?
Gosh, not really. It's just been lovely chatting with you. I would like to put in a caveat that I have only been doing narrative design for a little over a year. I am by no means an expert. So if anyone wants to hunt me down and yell at me for something I've said that proved incorrect in their own lives, feel free, but everybody's
If
experience
they
is going to
want
be
to prove
different.
you wrong, they can come on the podcast.
Yeah,
There,
absolutely.
there we go. But also, your experiences outside of narrative design also have an impact. You would not be the narrative designer you are if you hadn't done those D&D campaigns. If you hadn't, you know, gotten published, you wouldn't have had the confidence without getting published to be like, yes, I'm a narrative designer. Now pay me for my writing.
Right.
And that's important. And there are people who might listen to this and be like, how do I get started? And everyone's creative path looks different. You can't narrow it down and say, yes, well, if you want to get paid for doing this, you need to do these 4 steps. That's not a thing that you can find in nature.
I do have
Sorry.
one bit of advice for pretty much anyone who wants to get into game dev that is
Mhm.
proven pretty true across the board from everyone I talk to. Just get out in your local communities and find a local dev group. There is nothing quite like meeting with other creatives and collaborating in person, as great as it is to working
Yeah.
remote. Like that in-person collaboration is a phenomenal experience and a great way for anyone to get started.
Last week's episode, I talked to Luis Bellato, and we
Mhm.
talked about how game jams are critical, especially if you are a beginner dev, because being able to finish a thing, I think, is a skill, and it's a skill that not a lot of people have. Myself included, I am very bad at finishing things, whether it be food or movies or TV shows or what have you. A lot of times we're like, all right, cool, I can see the ending. I'll get back to it later. And then I just never go back. But being able to go and iterate over and over and over and finish thing is good. And it's also a good way to make friends because if you find people who want to make games, you're probably going to have a fun time. Or hopefully, putting a little asterisk up there. All right. But if people want to hear more from you or see samples of your work, where can they find that?
My portfolio is viewable at lillaglass.com, pretty easy to find.
And that
You
is
can
Lila
connect with me
spelled
on
with 2 L's.
yes, Lillaglass. Sorry, I always forget that my name it's spelled wrong. I think people maybe my parents have a sense of humor or something.
It's
Um,
fine.
but yeah, honestly, connecting with me on LinkedIn is the best way. That's the app that I'm on. Oh, I sound so boring, so adult when I say that. The social media app I am on most is LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with me and chat a little bit about game design, that's the easiest place to find me.
Awesome. And as always, listener, thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to be a part of the conversation, you can join our Discord, which will be the link to which will be in the show notes of this episode and of most episodes after like episode 6. And yeah, leave us a review, tell your friends, subscribe on YouTube, and just generally have a great rest of your day, because that's what's most important, honestly. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good one.